Excited for another video in our series on writing and AI. And in this video, we're going to talk a little bit about inclusion, UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning. We could have a whole series, a whole webinar series on accessibility and on some of the ethical implications of AI and really go into a deep dive there. Maybe we will over the course of time. But for right now, this is where we've chosen to start. And in doing so, really excited that Eileen Heller of ESU3 and Crystal Ernst of ESU2 are joining us for this conversation as we start to, one, learn a little bit about what UDL is, but then two, think about where that sort of meets our AI conversation and writing broadly. And so, Eileen, I'm going to kick things over to you to start. Thanks, and tell us a little more about UDL.
Yeah, so if we go back to really just looking at inclusion itself, the human brain learns to listen first, then speak, then read, and then write. And that writing piece is the most complex piece of the human brain. And so understanding that all of our learners might struggle with that piece, if there's any barriers towards any of the other areas that go along with writing, then we can really look at what inclusive practices can we be doing in our class that's going to reduce the barriers towards those ultimate goals. And one of my favorite frameworks to introduce to teachers, leaders is the Universal Design for Learning framework to help give ideas around those inclusive practices that they might want to utilize. And when we're looking at the Universal Design for Learning guidelines, there are two ultimate goals. One is what can we do to reduce the barriers for the students as they're trying to attain and master the goals. And what we don't want to do is reduce the rigor. So when I look at a standard and the standard says use a recursive writing process to present clear and concise information, that recursive writing process is very typical around the brainstorming and the drafting and the revising and publishing piece. But if it's around clear and concise information for a specific audience, that has a lot of flexibility around it. So my firm goal there is I'm going to get the students to really understand that recursive writing process, all those components. But what's flexible is who is their audience? Who is it that they really want to engage with? What topic might be relevant to them? What might be the purpose in it? And I might lean on another standard to bring in something like explanatory text or informational text around that. So when we're looking at that, we keep the firm goal, but we look for some flexible means. And in that Universal Design for Learning framework, they have used a lot of neuroscience and research to understand that our brains as learners light up when we're given multiple means of three things: multiple means of representation around the topic, multiple means of engagement to make it relevant and interesting and connected and maybe working with a peer or collaborating with somebody, and then multiple means of action and expression. So what does it mean to demonstrate learning? And oftentimes as educators, we lean on how was I expected to demonstrate learning around this topic? And that's the only way we offer. So the important piece around it is multiple means will provide that flexibility for the student. The other ultimate goal is that then when the student makes a choice, you give them time to reflect on it, to build learner agency. And so that learner agency piece is really a big part of the UDL framework also, because getting the students to metacognitively think about the choices and flexibility offered. Did that choice make sense for me? Did it work for me in my learning? And that reflection piece is going to be a key part to it. So when we're looking at that writing piece, just kind of tie this with a bow a little bit. When teachers are really looking at that writing, they have to go back into the standards, the learning goals, because it's going to guide you on what the students really need to learn. But the how is up to you as a teacher to design. And that Universal Design for Learning framework is a great way to kind of help you build in those flexible means.
Yeah, and so much of in trying to lay out the conversations that are part of this resource, or if you're viewing this video, you should check out that resource, was thinking about how we could not have overlap conversations here, but inevitably it's going to happen. So I'd certainly encourage folks to go check out the standards conversation that we recorded. also with Eileen and Crystal, as I think that will certainly dovetail nicely with some of the things that you brought up there. And so as we then start to think about that phrase, right, firm goals, flexible means, we can kick that over into how can AI support some of that flexibility? And I think that there are a myriad of ways that we can think about that as it pertains to the entire design of a lesson, but also specifically how that pertains to writing, as we've established throughout this series, in an ELA classroom, but also across content areas. Not a simple conversation to dive into, but Crystal, we're going to get your thoughts on that. So where does that hit for you?
Yeah, so like Eileen said, that we want to look at the standard for where the option is for flexibility. So I used to teach 7th grade English, so I went into the 7th grade standards. And one of the writing standards talks about using that recursive writing process to develop writing, but then to use pre-writing activities and inquiry tools to plan, organize, and draft writing. So it doesn't say what those activities have to be, and it doesn't say what the tools are. So this is the opportunity when I design that lesson to look at how AI could maybe be a scaffold for some of my students. So that might give them the opportunity when we pre-write or brainstorm, they could talk to a partner, they could journal on their own, or maybe they could use AI as a thought partner and use that chat bot to get some ideas back. And so looking at, when I look at those flexible means, how could AI be used to help students get some feedback or additional instruction or a thought partner to help guide their thinking? So it doesn't have to be final product AI, but it could be a way for them to overcome some of those barriers and that cognitive load, or within their own lack of knowledge in certain areas, so that they can perform at that firm goal level.
Yeah, and probably a good opportunity here. We have a little bit of space left in our aim for this particular video to start to explore, further examples, right? And so, give us maybe a couple more practical looks at what this might mean for classroom teachers as they're thinking about the opportunity to design their, as we have said before we started recording today, classroom routines, to have that UDL piece be a part of it. And at times that might be driven by AI.
So one of the options a lot of teachers will already give is students could run a final product through Grammarly, which is actually an AI tool. So we kind of already do that, or they could ask a partner to read it. So again, that UDL lens is not requiring them to choose any pathway, but like Eileen said, to have that student agency to choose what's best for them. That same piece with any part. So even drafting, have AI give a simple draft and then have students go in and do that revision and that heavy lifting part of making it really what they wanted with intention before they publish. And so using some of that to offset that cognitive load.
I'll share an example also. The additional ELA kind of writing piece to it is oftentimes gather and use credible evidence in the writing piece. Sometimes you'll even see that in a science specific one or a social studies specific standard. And it doesn't really say what tool you have to use to gather and use that credible evidence. Oftentimes teachers are allowing them to cite multiple different types of evidence. So it might be something from their book. It might be in the past a Google search, but it's also an area where we can lean into the AI tool to do some of that evidence, depending on what the tool is and the evidence you're seeking out, to actually find that and kind of synthesize it and support the students in it, so that the student then can focus more on that firm goal of that recursive writing process, instead of, do I know how to wade through all of the evidence that's out there and what is not credible and what is credible? And of course, that's a piece of the puzzle too. And then when you're selecting those tools, I always look for that accessibility feature that our students are going to need around, does it allow for text, visuals? Does it have a text-to-speech option? There's some great tools out there that allow for that, such as Schools AI has like this nice little dictation microphone where the student can dictate in their prompt, or it has a little speaker where it will send it back so that the student doesn't have to read the text if that's going to be the barrier. I've seen some that are adding in the additional layer of being able to translate. So if your native language is a barrier towards the content, then you want to kind of look for those accessibility tools when you're selecting the AI tool that might be best.
One other suggestion that's not even mine, I'm actually stealing it from Eileen, who's mentioned it, was our firm goal in AI, or in UDL, is student agency. So to allow students the opportunity then to defend the use of AI with whatever they're doing. So if a student comes up with the idea of, like, could I use a school AI chatbot to get some brainstorming ideas, talking it through with that student. Is this still aligned? Will you still meet our firm goal? Is that taking away from your learning, and letting the student use their own defense of the tool to prove that they can use it without taking away from that firm goal?
Yeah, and having that ability to articulate at that level, right, what the action verb is, to kind of get back to that previous video, is clarity in the learning experience, and something that we hope all students are able to do. Like, right, that's what you do when you go to do your observations. You walk around and ask students, hey, what are you working on and why? What do you hope to get out of this? What's the skill that you're leveraging? And if they can think about that intentionally as they leverage the technology, I think that's a really solid aim for us in support of students in the classroom. And in the time that we have left, I guess, and what have we not covered here in this fairly quick conversation, but hopefully one that allows people to see how we are aligning this with UDL, which best practices, in that vein, and that AI can actually enhance that work if done thoughtfully, and is something that we can give students the space, as you just mentioned, to point to also in the midst of their process.
I think one thing that I want to touch on is the action and expression principle within the UDL guidelines. And so often we think of writing as just multi-paragraph compositions or essays, and expanding our thinking around that writing can look in multiple forms. So if the standard doesn't specifically say it needs to be in multi-paragraph composition or an essay format, that we expand that in the use of AI tools that can support students towards that action and expression. I know myself, I can generate thought and ideas. I do not generate visuals to support those ideas very easily. So I lean on tools within Adobe Creative Cloud Express or Canva to support that, or I lean on supports within the AI tools that might be within slide deck building that allows it to kind of lift the visual representation for me, so that I, as the person wanting to express myself in that recursive writing process, can lean into the thoughts and ideas and the organization and those types of things. So leaning on the use of AI, or allowing students to verbalize, hey, would it be okay if I use AI to visualize the imagery towards this presentation? That's where that teacher can go look at what is that firm goal within our standard and learning goal, and then determine, okay, is that a great place to advocate for that student's learner agency to select that tool?
And Crystal, anything kind of parting words as we bring things to a close?
I think just part of the beauty of UDL is that the teacher has time to plan with intention to try to eliminate those student barriers. So sometimes we're very hesitant about implementing AI into our classrooms and what we can use it for. But with the UDL design, I can really intentionally decide how AI will eliminate the barrier and be ready to use it, instead of trying to make those decisions recursively. And so planning that with intention is so important, because we want to make sure that students see the benefit and the actual use. And we're going to talk a lot about correct use of AI. And so that will just benefit them in the future.
And hopefully with this resource, we're providing additional examples. So go check out those videos and some of the learning that you have here. As Eileen mentioned a moment ago too, we're also going to give a little bit on tools. And so thinking about things like age restrictions, which doesn't help with the accessibility piece, but it's certainly one of the pieces you should be thinking about as you select those as well, in addition to what Eileen brought up. So that's within this resource also. One of the best resources we have are people. And so definitely across the ESU network, there are great folks that you can connect with to support your school and your teachers as they think through this work. And that resource I was referencing a moment ago is here at bit.ly/NE for Nebraska, Writing AI. And so to both of you, thank you so much for your time, for your expertise here on our conversation. And we hope that this conversation has been helpful to folks as they think about what it means to, advocate for this in their own classroom or amongst their team or in their building. And as I say in all of these, like with all due sensitivities to all the different factors and aims and ambitions that are out there, we hope that this is just a thought partner for you in support. And so thanks for being a part of our learning here today.